But here in Luke, it says, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last. Not everybody, but some.
Welcome to the Laughing Mystics, an unorthodox journey through the liturgical year with Laura Lewis Barr and Marcy Maderi. Hang on to the end of the podcast because we'll have special messages and maybe jokes from Marcy. And so that's your reward for hanging all the way in there.
I'll have to make sure that we keep it clean.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably good. I've marked us as clean on the podcast platforms. We want to introduce a new segment called Share the Mic. And in Share the Mic, we want to invite you listeners to send us at laughing.mystics@gmail.com. It's always in the show notes. Send us a recording from your phone. And as Marcy always says, you can ask a younger person if you're not sure how to do that.
Yes.
But send us your thoughts, and from time to time, I'm going to be able to put them in, and we get to hear from you directly. One last thing. We always ask you at the end to go to rate my podcast /Laughing Mystics, thelaughingmystics.com. It's in the show notes. We would love that, especially if you're an Apple listener. If you're an Apple listener and you can put a rating down, we would just could we do a cartwheel, Mars?
I used to, but I think I might fall on my head now.
We'll do imaginary cartwheels and dance moves if you do that.
We're in the 21st Sunday of Ordinary Time, and I'm going to invite Laura to read this one.
Oh, no.
Because it has names of cities and nations.
Oh, my gosh, the names are so hard. A reading from Isaiah. Thus says the Lord, I know their works and their thoughts, and I come to gather nations of every language. They shall come and see my glory. I will set a sign among them. From them I will send fugitives to the nations, to Tarshish, Put and Lud, Moshach, Tubal and Javan, to the distant coastlands that have never heard of my fame or seen my glory, and they shall proclaim my glory among the nations. They shall bring all your brothers and sisters from all the nations as an offering to the Lord, on horses and in chariots, in carts, upon mules and dromedaries, to Jerusalem, my holy mountain, says the Lord. Just as the Israelites bring their offering to the house of the Lord in clean vessels. Some of these I will take as priests and Levites, says the Lord.
Well done, my gosh, friend. Well done.
I put and Lud? What? Okay, I don't know.
Foreign nations.
Foreign nations, yep.
So an interesting piece is that this is from the last chapter of Isaiah. So, Isaiah, like all prophets, are like, live well and you will prosper. If you keep going on your track of sinfulness and destruction, you too will be destroyed really by yourselves. Not so much God destroys you, but your actions will destroy you. So this is kind of that sending out, that outgoing, that all the nations will adore the Lord, will adore God. And the Jews that are, spread far and wide in the diaspora, come back home to Jerusalem and are sent out again. And just that broadness, that bigness of God and the inclusion of God.
That's nice. I was reading Karen Armstrong, I think it was, and she was saying that when the Jewish people got dispersed, the temple was destroyed, the emphasis on the law and on the ritual held the people together. And so it's interesting because the Jews consciously or unconsciously knew the importance of the law for them. And yet, I think it reminds me of my life that sometimes a certain thing is right for me, and then it needs to be let go of. You know? And so the old laws don't pertain anymore. They were useful for a time. And I'm not saying that Christianity is any more evolved than Judaism. I'm only saying the metaphor of the usefulness of the structures in our lives, that we have them and then we maybe can let them go.
Right, that they've served their purpose.
Yeah.
I know from my Jewish friends that the law, dietary laws, all of that helps them feel connected to one another, to be that people.
Exactly. So I worked on this reading for a while because, I couldn't find my way in. And then I did find some ideas that I liked, and I want to start with the word fugitive, because that image of the one who doesn't belong in these cities, this person, this kind of outcast, this person who, doesn't belong. That word fugitive really hit me because I can feel that way. I can feel like I am speaking a truth that is my truth, and I can feel like I'm speaking it in a land like we're not doing a podcast that looks at Joseph Campbell or Carl Jung writing and you give the biblical perspective on it.
Yep.
We're in the land, we're in the Catholic or Christian world, and I am speaking to it, and it can feel really scary and hard for me to be the fugitive speaking in a different land. I'll be coming back to this through these readings, actually, but that's my first thought.
Yeah, it's an interesting perspective, and I think one that you don't know unless you know it, in the sense that I would never see you, Laura, in that light, as the outsider or the fugitive, but as a partner in this. And I also hear you, how you might experience it that way. So thank you for your vulnerability.
Yeah, I am. I tend to be really afraid that we're all sent out, though, right? We're all sent out because all of us have our own unique insight. I hunger for community, and that's why I do this. That's why I go to church. But the shadow side of community for me is the maybe pushing away individual quirks, idiosyncrasies of belief, of action, of personality. And I think groups do exert a big pressure. I think church groups really do. And I think my opinion is that I want to belong so much that I may succumb. Now, I was out in the desert from the church for 40 years, so I won't anymore. I've been made into a new people in myself, but I'm able to speak to it now because I've been in both places.
Yes. And there is a balance of coming together in unity and yet creating space for difference.
Yeah.
And how to do that. Because if it's everybody is so different, then there is no unity, different in belief. How do we find that common core that connects us all? And I think a lot of people do feel like a fugitive in one way or another.
I think that's true. I think, this idea of even, there have been Catholics recently that have said to me sort of in hushed tones, talking about maybe the profession of faith. Well, I don't really believe that, And so there's like a fear of admitting, people have admitted differences in belief to me, and it feels like a wonderful relief. And so I'm not sure I agree that even we have to believe exactly the same thing. I think it's hard, though. It's definitely a tension if you don't. I was going to the Quakers for a while, and that's trippy because you can sit in circle with a bunch of Quakers, and the circles I was in, half the people there or more were atheists, didn't believe in God at all. And that can be confusing to me, but I don't care, whatever works, and they're coming for their own reasons. But there's a tension.
Diversity in unity. How do we come together with each of our different selves and yet find some kind of oneness, one kind of unity?
Right.
Just even like to speak out, on issues. The United States Catholic bishops have put out a couple statements about the horrible ways we're treating migrants in this country. So there needs to be some unity around that, to have that voice and make that statement, knowing, there's still varied ideas and beliefs about that.
Yeah, I think the thing that is why this is such a great subject to me, because if there's pressure that we all need to believe the same, then people who don't believe will just shut down. They'll just hide out, and we'll never know, right? For me, what I'm always hungry for is agape, and that's tricky and hard. Once we work through the struggle of diversity, then the richness is just so amazing. And I think that's this reading, because we've got nothing but diversity here, all these countries that are going to come together. And so I did a little active imagination, because these country names don't do anything for me. And so I said, the tattooed biker, the poor migrant, the stripper, the one in jail, all come. Like all of these people that I may think of as other, they all come. And so the question I have for you and for everyone is, who is most other? Those are the people that are coming.
And in the reading, it says that they shall come and see God's glory, right? So they come for a single purpose, or for a unitive purpose. It's can I be open to people that make me feel uncomfortable?
Exactly what I'm saying.
Right. Can I be open to people that make me feel uncomfortable? And we all have different descriptions of that. We have people on the far left and the far right politically.
Exactly. And I was just being playful with these characters. I'm not sure biker or stripper. I don't even think those necessarily make me uncomfortable. They might have in the past.
Yes. It's just even walking here, there's all kinds of people I see on this little half-mile walk to the library. And just to notice, like, inside myself, who makes me feel uncomfortable and why? Yeah, it's a good reflection as I walk.
And yeah, that is what we're called to do, is to be as open as God is in this case.
Right? To be clean vessels. I like that phrase. A reading from the letter to the Hebrews. Sisters and brothers, you have forgotten the exhortation addressed to you as children. my son, do not disdain the discipline of the Lord, or lose heart when reproved by him. For whom the Lord loves, he disciplines. He scourges every son he acknowledges. Endure your trials as discipline. God treats you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? At the time, all discipline seems a cause not for joy, but for pain. Yet later it brings the peaceful fruit of righteousness to those who are trained by it. So strengthen your drooping hands and your weak knees. Make straight paths for your feet, that what is lame may not be disjointed, but healed.
All right, what do you say about Hebrews?
I say, wow, I'm so glad I'm a girl. This is all about sons. So clearly I must be exempt from discipline. But that first part, when it starts, my son, do not disdain from the discipline of the Lord, that is actually from Proverbs. It's a quote from Proverbs. And Proverbs is definitely written like a grandfather or father, but an older man to his son or grandson, sharing wisdom. That's what Proverbs is about. Okay, I can get the guy thing here. I struggle with it, not having inclusive language. Even brothers and sisters, to be attentive to our gender non-binary friends, we could say beloved, but it feels like it's not about me. That's how it feels for me. Which in this case, okay, maybe that's okay. I don't really want to be disciplined or be okay with being scourged.
What I thought of is that every moment is a moment of learning for me. In other words, that whenever I'm triggered, which is a lot, if I'm honest, fear or frustration or whatever the emotional, emotions are that wonderful barometer that gives me information. And it gives me information of the work I need to do. And so there's always that inner part that urges me toward growth. And that's what I'm hearing in this, that, I talked about the struggle with the podcast, and that's sort of for me like the discipline of God that, okay, so I have a story.
Oh, I like a good story.
Yeah. So I was teaching public speaking at a local college, and most of my students were taking it their freshman year at this little local college in the Chicago area. Because it was often their first class in college, a lot of times they didn't really understand that they had to hand in work and come to class. And that's great. I had the joyful task of getting them into a new reality, because high school had been one reality.
Right.
And I had a big struggle learning how to do that in a way that had a lot of compassion for them. And one of the things I had to allow was allow them to fail, because I knew that that was an act of love for them, that I had to allow that. I had one student, Joe, who never came to class, never handed anything in. And I said, Joe, it doesn't look like you're going to pass. You might want to drop. And he begged me, and I said, all right, if you do really well on your final speech, I maybe can get you passing grade, maybe. But our class has already ended. You missed the last class of your group. So you're going to have to go to another section. So
wow, this is the very end of the semester.
Oh, yeah. Because they finished yes.
Wow.
So Joe shows up in a class that has been meeting 16 weeks. He doesn't know anyone in that class. He looks like he's going to pass out. And I just feel so bad. I'm just like, oh no, this poor kid. I just want to take him aside and say, Joe, I'll give you a C. Just let's call it a day. I can't stand to watch you suffer. But I knew that wouldn't serve him. So I sat down. Everybody gave their speeches. Joe was the last one. He got up. He gave a really good speech. And then the class, you know how it is at the end of the class, everybody tears out. And I see him. He's walking down the hall. He's floating down the hall. And I called him, Joe, you did so great. I might be able to give you a C. And he didn't care about the grade. And that was the only time I think I ever met a student who didn't care about the grade.
Wow.
He had conquered, public speaking is hard. And he had conquered a fear. He had shown up. And so this idea of discipline, for me, I went to the beauty of it. Like I guess I glazed over the scourging. I don't care. Like I took it as a metaphor, right? That I need discipline in my life. I want to grow. And so I constantly have tasks that teach me.
Well, and that is a really good interpretation of the word discipline, is like an athlete is disciplined or a musician is disciplined, that they do their craft or their art or their sport regularly and practice.
Yeah.
And keep going with it. That is a discipline.
Right. And if you don't practice, then it's really hard to change myself unless, like you're saying, you do it constantly.
It's all practice.
Yeah.
It's all practice. I had a yoga teacher who would say, this isn't a yoga perfect. This is yoga practice. And the discipline is that choice to keep showing up, to keep doing it, to keep trying it, even if it isn't beautiful or great.
One more thing I wanted to say. I love this last line, make straight paths for your feet, that what is lame may not be disjointed but healed. I think it was, I couldn't find this quote, I searched for it, but I think it is by the author Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves.
Oh, yes, yes.
She's so amazing. I think it was her, and she said something like, psychologically, if we don't deal with our wounds, we are like someone who breaks a leg and waits 10 years to set it.
Wow. What an image.
Yeah, so, this idea of this last image of this reading, that what is lame may not be disjointed but healed, that we attend to our brokenness right away. Don't shove it down, because it's so much harder to heal, and we can heal in these kind of disjointed ways.
And that is actually kind of harkens back to Isaiah. Isaiah really loves to play with this shepherd image.
Yeah.
Like a shepherd, he feeds his flock and gathers the lambs in his arms. And so I do think of that, the lamb that is lame, and that the shepherd lovingly bandages and cares for that little lamb so they may be healed and not disjointed.
So I actually like this reading because it feels very true that my daily challenges have changed me for the better.
Well, and it's a sideways blessings of the challenges in our past, is that when we face a new one, we can say, okay, well, I did all this with God's help, and God's not going to leave me now. And so I can get through this current one. Builds that spiritual strength.
I really think we need it. I think without it, there is a droopy hand kind of culture. A reading from the Gospel of Luke. Jesus passed through towns and villages, teaching as he went, and making his way to Jerusalem. Someone asked him, Lord, will only a few people be saved? He answered them,
Strive to enter through the narrow gate, For many, I tell you, will attempt to enter, but will not be strong enough. After the master of the house has arisen and locked the door, then will you stand outside knocking and saying, 'Lord, open the door for us.' He will say to you in reply, 'I do not know where you are from.' And you will say, 'We ate and drank in your company, and you taught in our streets.' Then he will say to you, 'I do not know where you are from. Depart from me, all you evildoers.' And there will be wailing and grinding of the teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, and you yourselves cast out. And people will come from east and west, and from north and south, and will recline at the table of God. For behold, some are last, will be first, and some are first, who will be last." Ba-ba-ba-bum. Ba-ba-ba-bum. I just really like it whenever we get wailing and grinding of teeth.
Oh, you like that, huh?
Yeah, it's just so real. Wailing and grinding of teeth. Ah!
Yeah, it's a different Jesus. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was Armstrong I read that said the writers were making Jesus more of a militant Jesus because of the world that they were in, a world of persecution.
There's truth in that. For me, it's about relationship. I know I've talked about that in the past, but like, do I know God? Does God know me? And that's a piece where Jesus says that the master says, "I do not know you and where you are from." Is it just a surface thing, me and God? Or is it a heart thing that we really know each other?
Tell me more about what you mean by know each other.
That vulnerability, I think that's what Jesus is asking, is that to be followers, to be really in love with God, we have to be vulnerable. You know, we have to share, just like you have, our hurts and our angst and our fears, as well as our joys, and not just stay on the surface.
Yeah, and I think I'm trying to hear what you're saying, and I'm thinking that knowing God in the way that you're talking about strikes me as the God within me, that it's kind of that inner place. That inner place is my relationship with God. That's how I hear that. So if I have no relation to my own inner space, then I have no relation to the higher self, God, whatever. Does that track with what you're saying?
Yeah, I think so. That and that idea of Christ within me. And it's just that pouring out my soul to God, to really share the hard stuff, to be really present. And, you know, I was just in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I used to work at the convent with the Franciscan sisters there. And in the convent, there's a chapel, an adoration chapel of the Blessed Sacrament, Eucharistic adoration. And I just took 45 minutes and I sat in that chapel. It was the best thing, because for me, it's about putting myself in God's presence and being present to presence.
Yeah. And however we do it, I think this is a terrible thing to say. I'm going to say, I'm going to say it. And I said this to somebody at the church where Marcia and I go. I don't always go to church because sometimes church feels like it gets in the way of my worship. And, it's sort of a joke, but not a joke, because being in present, you said it so beautifully. Say it again.
To be present to presence.
Yeah. And I find that by being with a tree or that sort of mysticism of silence, that really works in me in a big way. I can really see myself in a quiet chapel and really descending into God in that way. I get that totally.
An older sister was explaining Eucharistic adoration to me. She said, we sit and gaze at the Eucharist so we can recognize God when we're outside the chapel. We train our eyes to see God so we can see God in all things.
That is really beautiful. And that is the ability, that training is the ability to go through the narrow gates. And it's like you were saying before about practice.
Mary Oliver wrote, not in a poem, but in some prose, about the importance of prayer is that we pray because it trains us, because the prayer changes us and we become different. And it then opening ourselves up to God becomes normal and natural and not something we have to think about.
I love that. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Written by Will Durant, attributed to Aristotle. Yeah, so we're circling around this idea of practicing and that you don't get to just show up at the door.
I find it interesting. I think in the Gospel of Matthew it says, the first will be last and the last will be first. But here in Luke it says, some are last who will be first, and some are first who will be last. Not everybody, but some. I just noticed that difference. Thought, oh, that's kind of fun.
Yeah. What I noticed that is interesting is the use of the word strong enough. It's a matter of strength to enter the narrow gate, and it's not about being kind of slippery. It's about being strong.
Which takes me back to the second reading where we talk about training and showing up and keep on doing that and that discipline it takes to have strength.
Exactly. And so I tried to think about what are the strengths that I'm working on that feel like relate to the narrow gate. And for me, it's being honest with myself, not projecting my stuff onto others, or to say it the opposite way, recognizing where I might want to lie to myself and where I'm hijacked by fear and desire. So, I mean, those are just everyday strength training for me. It never ends.
A spiritual director once told me that, we've got to do it, until we die and then 3 days after. Because Jesus had an extra 3 days. So we get an extra 3 days. For me, it's pride. Pride shows up in all kinds of ways. And, it's just even like, oh, I'm so not prideful. Oh, that was pride again. I'm doing so well on my pride. Look at me.
We may get a joke in this episode. We may not, depending on how long it is. But I want to thank you for being with us. And it means so much to know that you're listening. And we do hope to make this a conversation with you in any way that we can. And we would love you to share this podcast because it's really just word of mouth that helps us reach more people, and it makes it fun.
It sure does. Okay, here's our joke. It's from that second reading.
Oh, wow, go.
So, God said that men should make coffee. Do you know why?
Why?
Hebrews.
Oh my gosh. Oh, it's so bad.
I couldn't resist. Okay, on that note, have a great week, listeners.
Bye.